What's up, friend? Hey, I'm Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast. This is the show created for videographers to build a better business, make a bigger impact, and enjoy the journey. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Core Group. Today's episode is all about diversification in your business and how it's key because putting all of your eggs in one basket can be detrimental to your business. We also talk about why you need to consider passive income opportunities along your video business journey and the importance of having a tribe and not relying on yourself to do everything. If you want to meet and network with other video business owners, make sure that you join our totally free Facebook group where you can pose questions, you can post work, you can get feedback, and you also find people that you can do work with. If you're shooting out of state, if you need help with an edit, this community is for you. So go to facebook.com or open up your local Facebook app and just type in the search, Grow Your Video Business, and you'll find us there. Or you can go to studiosherpas.com/Facebook and it will send you over to the free group. So with that, let's jump into the next part of this show. If there was one thing that could have ended my business 17 years ago, it would be because of the numbers. I hate accounting, taxes, W-9s, W-2s, W-40s, spreadsheets, all of that stuff. And I hate it mostly because I'm afraid of it. I'm just not great with numbers. If this sounds familiar, or if you're so new in your business that it's not even on your radar yet, you need Core Group. Core Group can help you create financial systems and tax strategies that you need so you can grow profitably, and they've been doing this for over 20 years. They become an extension of your team so that you can stay in your lane of expertise and then lean on them to help guide you along the way. For me, having a team of experts in my corner to help keep track of our books and just to make sure that we're budgeting for taxes appropriately, to have an actual strategy for our taxes and our accounting is priceless. And it allows me to sleep easier at night knowing that I don't have to be an expert in that arena. If you want to avoid surprises in your video business and you want experienced help building a plan for the future that you want, both professionally and personally, head over to studiosherpas.com/core for more information. And when you're ready to set up a free consult with them, make sure to mention Studio Sherpas for a special discount too. Got your back. Get more out of your accountant. Go to studiosherpas.com/core. What's up, everybody? Hey, welcome to this episode of the podcast. My guest today is Mr. Jeffrey Johnson, who is the owner of Jeffrey Johnson Pictures. Jeffrey Johnson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Good to be here.
Dude, so what... I was going to try and make a joke, but I'm just going to pass. Let's skip over my attempts at jokes. And Jeffrey, tell us what you do for work.
So I'm a commercial photographer and filmmaker, videographer in Chicago. I'm really passionate about architecture and interiors, product, food, and branding. Really love commercial work. Kind of used to be jack of all trades, like most people start out as a freelancer, and over the years really landed on the things that I love most. And these days I'm working a lot with interior designers and architects.
So you did get your start, though, in photography, right?
Yeah. I basically grew up around photography. My dad was a photographer. He managed a camera shop when I was a little kid and always had a darkroom at home, that kind of thing. But to me, that was like, oh, that's what your dad does. That wasn't like a job. So yep. I was an artist, though. I was very creative, loved drawing, painting, all that kind of stuff, and thought I would pursue that. And I studied design, but ended up working in like retail management for years and sales and things like that. And so I didn't really have a great creative outlet. And then when my dad passed away in 2009, I was like, maybe life is too short to be doing something that I'm not super excited and passionate about. And I wanted a creative outlet. I wanted to kind of return to my roots. So I started taking photography classes and immediately was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I did a 2-year certificate program, quit my proverbial day job, and for about 10 years now have been working as a professional photographer. So that was kind of my start. And then over the years, as I started to home in on like the type of work that I enjoyed the most, I loved dealing with commercial shoots and commercial clients, architects, builders, interior designers. And one client in particular had asked me at some point, like, hey, you do video, right? And when you're a freelancer, you just say yes, and then like you figure it out. And and I had dabbled a little, but I wasn't super knowledgeable yet. But I thought they have pretty low expectations. This is kind of a small project they want to do. And so let me just give it a try. And I did a great job. They were super happy with it. And that kind of became an ongoing thing. And so anytime they'd hire me to do photos, I'd be like, hey, do you want to do some video while I'm there? And it gave me an opportunity to kind of take off little bites at a time. With each of those gigs, I would be like, okay, this turned out pretty well, but I probably could have done it a little bit better if my lighting had been better, or if I had this piece of equipment. So I kind of started collecting gear and paying for it with each shoot that I would get hired to do, and just doing a little bit more and more. And, I'm so glad that I did, because in the last couple of years, the shift toward video content has been huge on social media, just with the amount of engagement that it gets and how much more exposure you get by integrating that. So these clients that I've had for a long time that have really just been after stills, now they really want to do both. And so I'm trying to be that person that can kind of keep everything under one roof and make their lives easy.
So if it came down to like just doing one of those things, which would you land on?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to say right now, video, because I feel like that's just where everything is headed. And I enjoy both so much, but video at this point is newer to me. And so it gets me hungrier and more excited about the work. Yeah,
that's a similar vibe. I mean, everybody that gets into this work, they're like, ooh, there's so many, and there's just so much that can be done, right? And there's so much learning to do and so many things to try. It is super exciting. I always tell people, though, that are photographers that are like, oh, yeah, I'm thinking about dabbling, in video and starting. I always just like shake my head. I'm like, stay away. Don't do it. Save your money, because, like you go from having to get some cameras and lights to like, there's just like 8 bazillion things that you need as a video guy, and you're doing it more and more. And you're like, man, if I only had this light or this softbox, or if I just had this gimbal, or if I just had, this camera, it's just like, it's always something. And photography is so simple, and you can charge really high rates.
Oh, I don't know. I think you could have that conversation with some photographers, and they would have the complete opposite perspective. But it does require, a lot of equipment that I didn't have in the beginning. And I've kind of been slowly building up my arsenal so that I feel like I'm equipped for whatever I need to do. I remember at one point a client was like, hey, you do drone stuff too, right? And I was like, yeah. And, got off the call and ordered a drone immediately, and was like, okay, I guess I'm doing drone stuff now. Like you kind of have to see where the work takes you. And I don't want to invest in a bunch of equipment that I'm not really going to use. I definitely learned that lesson as a photographer, that the work really needed to come first. Buying the gear was not going to make the work come to me. I needed to like seek out the work that could justify acquiring the gear. But yeah, in video, I mean, there's definitely, it's like a whole other thing. But I'm also kind of starting to see I have to have a network of people around me that I can rely on. There are some projects that are going to be above my scope of knowledge, or kind of beyond my skill set. And so, I have met some other people who are producers or, cinematographers or editors. And now it's like, oh, hey, I've got this project coming up. Think this is going to be a little bit beyond what I can do myself, or what I really have the resources to do right now. And because there are a lot of people that are super specialized on the like film and video side, it's kind of like easier to call on one of those people than to just be like, oh, okay, now I've got to buy this thing and figure out how this works. I think there's a lot of strength in figuring out like, okay, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. let me stick to this that I know that I'm really good at and bring in somebody who's like an expert at that in particular and has a lot more experience.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like early on, probably for the first 10 years of me being in business, I was like, man, yeah, I guess we could buy a drone and figure that out, or we could buy a Steadicam and do all this stuff. And then we've accumulated all this stuff over the years and have accumulated a bunch of knowledge and experience. But there is definitely something to say for hiring a Steadicam expert or hiring a drone expert or a colorist or whatever that thing is. I mean, yeah, you can figure it all out, piecemeal it together, and it can turn out great. But depending on, if the client has a budget and if you're like, man, we could make this thing, 50% better, 100% better if we just had a professional scriptwriter do this thing instead of me kind of working with the client, coming up with something that's like, yeah, it's fine. But, sometimes the difference of hiring an expert and not is like, wow, like it's a massive difference.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, I want to be proud of what I do. I want to be proud of what I deliver to the client. So if it feels like this is not my strength, I would rather outsource. Maybe it eats into my profit a little bit. Maybe, I don't do much more than break even on the project. But if it gets the work out there that I can then say, hey, look at what I'm able to do. And I can steadily raise my prices because I'm showing more value in the work that I'm able to do by relying on some experts. So
yeah, and it's there is that feeling that you get of being extra proud because, well, yeah, I didn't do it all myself. I was able to bring somebody in and lifted the quality of the work. But then also, like at some level, for clients to feel like, yeah, like this piece, and they might not know the difference between what you can do and what somebody that you bring in, but bigger picture, there should be more traction and more marketability with things that are done at a higher level. The layperson might not be able to tell the difference, but there might be just something subtle that's like, man, there's something about it that pushes it to a different level that makes it easier for somebody to share or get excited about or, refer you to somebody else in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, what is the vision for your business? Obviously, all of us a year and a half ago were kind of faced with some big questions like, wow, like me, am I going to have a business next year? What the heck is going on? Being multifaceted, having photo, having video. What's the dream for the next 2 or 5 years for you and your business?
Yeah, so I definitely went through a period of like freaking out early last year.
You are not alone, my friend.
Yeah, right. And before that, for about 5 years, I actually shot a ton of headshots. And I worked with another photographer who had started a headshot studio years ago. And that was like probably 75% of the work that I did. Wow. And it was very lucrative. And then I had commercial shoots that I did on the side. I had kind of stopped doing, weddings and events and portraits on my own years ago. And so the headshots was kind of like my mainstay. And I was a little burned out, and I didn't start that studio, so it was never going to be fully mine. And so I had decided, maybe I need to kind of turn the ship and just focus on commercial work and like really put all my time and attention back into my own business again. And was kind of in the middle of doing that when the pandemic started. And then I was like, well, great. Thanks, universe. I'll go ahead and put all my time and energy into my own business because headshots were not happening. So I basically kind of rebranded and relaunched last year because people kind of knew me as a headshot guy or as, from years ago, kind of jack of all trades. Because when you start out as a freelancer, you take like whatever work you can get. So I really wanted to show people like actually the work that I've really been doing and that I really love is architecture and interiors and things like that. And so I kind of thought, this is good, and maybe this work will kind of steadily trickle in through the pandemic. And actually everybody started like remodeling their houses, and so interior designers are like, super busy and had a great year. So it was actually a really good move to go in that direction. But I also knew that video is just more and more important all the time. And the engagement that they get on social media is just so much better if there's video content. And so I knew this has got to be part of what I do. And so my vision is really to be that studio that can do both. You know, if I come out to do stills, it's just understood that while I'm there, we're going to do some behind the scenes video, we're going to do some branding video, we're going to give you video content that you can use to really push yourself forward and make sure that people are engaging with whatever you put out on social.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know we've talked a little bit about passive income opportunities, and I know even for myself, back when the pandemic happened, you know, we had a couple of jobs that we were kind of working on, but there wasn't lots. It's like, what are we going to do in 2 months? You know, so we just really had to start thinking creatively. And we hosted a virtual summit. We were just trying to do networking and add value. And I know for me, I was like, man, if we could create more passive income opportunities that are not, you know, whether if there's a pandemic or not, might be affected, but not in the way where, like, man, if I need to go and film somewhere and there's a pandemic, I can't go and film somewhere, right? That put a halt to all of our in-person filming. And one of our course creator partners, Susan, she creates these amazing floral wearables. The first month of the pandemic, when everybody was at home and had nothing to do, we had one of our biggest sales months with her tutorials, because people were like, I want to learn I'll learn a new skill. I'll do something. I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs. And so that made me realize, wow, like, are there other things that we can do like this? Are there other course creator that we can partner with, or is there content that we can create ourselves that would be helpful to people that they would buy? And if we have an additional revenue source, that even if the world is fine and dandy, if we can just make extra money on the side and store it away. And my goal would be to have like 6 months of savings for the business, just to be very healthy. So if something really bad did happen, anything, if somebody got, you know, really hurt, one of our main people, that we wouldn't be just like, you know, operating month to month or anything like that. And then if something, you know, really drastic did happen, we'd have a great stockpile of cash. And it's hard when all you're doing is trading time for money. So talk a little bit about what you were mentioning before we got rolling.
Yeah. So I definitely had kind of a similar feeling, and I do feel very fortunate. I had a lot of savings before everything started, because ironically, 2019 was like my best financial year to date, and I was super busy. I kept telling myself, like, oh man, I was super busy with work this year. Like, I feel like I worked every single day. Even if I was on vacation, I was, you know, editing or, you know, answering emails and phone calls and stuff. It felt like I could never get away. And I traveled a lot actually in 2019 as well. And I remember thinking, like, all right, 2020, I'm going to work less and I'm going to travel less, just so I'm not in this constant state of like, shoot, I've got to,
your
totally.
fault.
I had manifested the pandemic. So, but it's funny. I mean, I felt very fortunate. I had just kind of come off of this year that I did really well, so that I wasn't, you know, completely up the creek like a lot of people found themselves. Yeah. That was very fortunate. But I went from the best year financially of my life to like making probably, you know, just revenue wise, like what I did when I was like 20 or something, you know, and so that was very shocking. And just kind of watching like those reserves kind of start to come down, I was like, okay, I've got to have something else going on. So in addition to my, you know, photos and video business and stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start looking into investing in real estate. Like, I own a condo that I rent out. And when I moved in with my partner, started doing that. And I'm like, maybe I need to look for another piece of property. Like, that could be a steady stream of income when it pays for itself. And the whole education thing, I think that there's been this explosion of demand for educational content online. And so I've been developing things like that. And I was like, you know what? I've got so many things I'm juggling right now. I can't possibly execute all of this on my own. So you know what? I'm gonna have to hire somebody on to help me with some of this stuff. And it sucks to spend money on something right now that's like not generating income just yet. But I'm like, if it's just me, I'm never going to get this off the ground, and it's never going to be anything else. So I kind of think of it as almost like a tripod, you know, with 3 legs for stability. I feel like I need those multiple sources of income moving into the future in case one of them gets shaky. You know, at least I have the other 2 to lean on. So that's kind of my goal moving forward. And it's one of those things too. Like, I also feel like 5 years from now, my game plan could be completely different. I had a mentor early on in my career who kind of took me under his wing. And he was a commercial photographer for over 50 years and is still a very good friend of mine. And when he retired, I actually bought him out of some of his clients that were regular business. And I had kind of learned a lot assisting him, and when he would like subcontract to me and toss me a job if he was too busy or something or out of town. And so he's just always been this great partner as far as, you know, learning and kind of showing me the ropes. And he really drove home to me the point that, like, you should never be complacent, like never get comfortable, always be looking for what's, you know, on the horizon and be ready to evolve and change. Because if you're doing really great at something and you get too comfortable, then like the world's going to up and change around you. And then all of a sudden you're going to be like outdated, obsolete, you know, and just get left in the dust. And so I'm constantly kind of forward thinking. And I think that's what's driven my transition into doing a lot more video and film stuff, because I see that, like, okay, this is getting bigger and bigger, and people are still going to need stills, you know, they're still going to want photography. But if I'm only able to do that, like, I'm not going to be able to remain competitive, because it's just not where the world is going.
Yeah, that's sage advice. I love that. I also, you struck a chord when you said, you know, it might cost some money to bring somebody in to help me do this, but and it might take a long time or a while before I actually start making money in this thing. But without bringing somebody in, it just wouldn't get done. Yeah. I have a family member, an older, probably wiser family member in my life, who wanted to start, like, you know, has all these amazing ideas for cool inventions and just all these different things, and but is also super protective of his or her ideas, and hasn't launched any of the things. And I've known this person for the majority of my life, and I look at this person and I think, I'm like, man, like, I mean, even if you brought on one partner to execute all of this stuff and you only got 50%, 50% of whatever revenue you get is more than the zero that you're currently sitting on, right?
That's so true.
And that when I kind of realized, I think somebody else had told me that, they're like, well, yeah, but if you don't do the idea, you get zero. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. We have this idea, this like fear mentality. People are going to steal our ideas, or they're going to do it, or whatever, which causes us to never do the thing. It's like, man, we could have such a bigger impact. We could do so much more stuff. It might cost us something, but big picture, it's like, you know, you look at some of these like incredibly rich, famous people like Elon Musk. There's no way. If he kept all of his ideas, you know, to himself, people are making millions and millions of dollars that work with him and work for him. And there's no way that stuff could get done if he kept all the things to himself and tried to do them all and just hire the right people. That's just not, there are few and far between the kind of people that can do that. So anyway, I think that's just a great encouragement for all of us as we think through, like, if there's an idea or something that, you know, just a business opportunity, like maybe somebody listening is thinking, I would love to buy a condo, but I can't buy it on my own. It's like, well, what if you brought in somebody else that could, and you split it 50-50? You could maybe make it happen then. And that's like that's a baby step toward something bigger and better. And then the next condo, maybe you could buy that on your own and you could afford to do it because you've got some residual income coming in from this one that you split with somebody. A million ideas, a million ways this conversation could go, but my big takeaway is that without bringing in some help or a partner and investing in some money, don't think of it as losing out on 50%. Think of it as like you get 50%, right? or nothing if the idea never comes to fruition.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to just kind of echo back to you said something about just people kind of being protective. And I think in a creative industry, people are super protective and tend to be a little like fearful of competition. Like, oh, if I bring this person in and I teach them something, that they're just going to become competition for me. And I think all of us feel that on some level, but I also think that if you surround yourself with good people and you actually treat them with integrity, nobody's trying to stab you in the back, and you actually get a lot out of mentoring and taking someone under your wing too. And I realize how like mutually beneficial that is now that I'm kind of in a role where I have people that I've hired on or that I've taught things. And I'm able to rely on them too. I've got an assistant recently who is now taken over social media for me because I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing it. I keep telling myself like, oh, I'm going to schedule it. I'm going to put it on my calendar, and I don't enjoy doing it. And so it's not getting done. And so it's like, oh, I could be doing this, or I could just pay a little bit of money and let someone else handle this for me. And the fact is, she brings a fresh eye to it, and I feel good about the work that I do, but I'm not the most social media savvy person. If she's better at that, then why would I not rely on her? And if she's, learning things from me by assisting me on jobs, like it goes back and forth. And I think both of you are better for it. And you're cheating yourself if you don't allow that to happen. There's a lot that I learned from her too, and she's younger. I just turned 40.
Dude, you're so old,
man. Well, I don't feel old at all, but every once in a while, she's in her 20s and she'll say something and I'm like, oh, I'm like a little bit out of touch. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, I have to ask for an explanation or something. I'm like, yeah, I need somebody who works on social media to have that perspective. I don't need to like be in charge of that anymore, apparently. so it's good for everybody.
Yeah, that's great, man. I think that's a great perspective. And I remember early on in my career, I said, you know what, I always want to hire people that are younger than me. I at least want to have somebody that is, in college or just that age, early 20s, to not to just like be trendy, but to have that perspective. And I don't ever want the work that we're doing for our clients to be irrelevant. I don't want it to, I don't want a 50 or 60-year-old client to hire us and be like, oh yeah, this is what we got to do. If it's not going to work, I don't want them to do that, right? If it's going to fall on deaf ears, we're going to do this video for them because it's the vision that they have, but they're out of touch with their audience is 20-year-olds. I want us to like have that perspective and make sure that we're bringing that into the room. And so, it keeps me on my toes. It keeps our team creative because honestly, when you look at the creators of today, the stuff that they make, and when I say they, I mean like, 20, early 20, mid 20, like those people are making unbelievable stuff at an alarming pace, so there is something or a lot of things to learn from them. And if there's a way to like mesh the old with the new, in my mind, the hybrid, that's where it like miracles happen. Right, because then it becomes a lot more. Again, depending on who your audience is, but I think there is like this, like, hey, I've been doing business for this long, and here's why I think this could work. And hey, you're brand new, but you're able to bring this perspective, and if you can bring those together and get the best of both worlds, I think everybody's better for it. And with that, I'm gonna drop the mic and just walk away. Just kidding. What would you say? We're kind of winding down here, but I'm just curious, like, when you look at, the past few years or maybe the past few months, like what stands out as something that you're just really proud of inside of your business?
Oh, wow. I would say, number one, that I'm still here, because last year was crazy. And I think a lot of people freaked out and totally changed gears and maybe changed industries. So the fact that I kind of regrouped and just kept my nose to the grindstone and just was like, okay, I got to figure this out. If it means working on my new website 12 hours a day or whatever, totally rebranding, hiring a copywriter to help me figure out like, okay, what's my message? Like, I think I could have just freaked out and decided to go a totally different direction. But I think I just figured out like, okay, how can I continue to evolve in a way that's still relevant and still lucrative? So I'm really proud of that. I got published in Architectural Digest for the first time, which was like a really big milestone for me. I also just booked a project I can't say too much about, but I'm going to be in LA photographing something really special
like the best
that belongs
description.
to somebody really well known. And I can't say more right now. It's not public just yet, but in a few months, I can't wait to share what I'm working on. There's some really cool stuff happening. So I'm excited. I feel like I planted some seeds last year and have been, nurturing them and watering them. And like finally, I'm starting to feel like, okay, stuff is coming up to the surface.
Yeah,
and
you
I'm
doubled
really
down
to see like the fruits of my labor
on yourself, and it's paying off. I love that.
Thank you.
Congrats. It's super exciting. There's a project that I'm working on. I can't tell you if it's photo or video or something else with the client that I can't even tell you if it's a client or not. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you. That is awesome. And yes, congrats. Love it. Well, is it fine to make fun of my guests? I don't know.
Just follow me on Instagram, and
Jeff,
then you'll find out about it all in a few months.
There you go. And how can they do that?
I
Where
am
are you
at
on Instagram?
Jeffrey Johnson Pictures.
Okay, do that, everybody. Go follow Jeffrey Johnson. But you're actually not following him. You're following his assistant. Just kidding. What advice would you give to our video maker friends that are listening?
I think really be open to changing constantly, and not just like chasing the trends, but like really just taking stock of what's happening in the world around you and always thinking ahead and being steps ahead, even if you're learning a skill that like you're not even offering to your clients yet or something, just kind of always thinking like what's coming next, so that when that thing is really in demand, you're the go-to.
I love that. That's great. Well, Jeffrey, where else people can obviously follow you on Instagram? Any other place where they should, if they want to look at your work or keep up with what you got going on?
Yeah, Instagram's really where the most is happening these days. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that. And other people in the industry, I would love to connect, whether it be on Facebook or LinkedIn. I do definitely love to grow my network of peers. And like I said earlier, I think a lot of times we can rely on each other and team up and do even bigger and better things together.
I love it. Super grateful to have you inside of the Studio Sherpas community, and just have loved getting to know you and just watch your business grow. It's awesome to see. So thank you so much for your time today. And any parting words for us as we move on?
Just keep moving forward, even when things are scary. Keep pushing yourself.
Awesome. Jeffrey, thank you. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, that wraps my interview with Jeffrey. So what do you think? Do you think that it's worth creating some kind of passive income for your video business? I did an awesome interview with Sean Cannell from Think Media on episode 133 entitled How to Create Passive Income for Filmmakers. If you're curious and you want to know more about this topic, check it out. But also leave a comment and let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. And you've heard me talk about, you've heard me whisper, you've heard all the whispers about the Onward Summit. This is going to be the most impactful in-person event for corporate filmmakers in 21. So if you're looking for an excuse to come to Detroit and hang out with me and 50 other amazing videographers, then sign up here to get notified when tickets go on sale. They're going to sell out. So make sure that you sign up to get notified at studiosherpas.com/onward. I'll also be posting information inside of the Facebook group. So if you're not part of the Facebook group yet, you can just search Grow Your Video Business in Facebook and get into the group there. Don't hesitate to reach out and say hi. My email is ryan@studiosherpas.com. I would love to see you inside of my inbox, but even more so inside of the Facebook group, because then I can see your picture and know that you're taking one step further, one step closer to building community with really an incredible group of people. That's it for now. I will see you on next week. I can't talk. I'll see you on next week's episode, right? Or inside of the group. Okay, I got to go now. Somebody send help. See ya.